Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's game day, Arkansas, Texas 2.0. Razorbacks have another lineup adjustment to make with a Thiero out for this one. We're going to talk about that. We're going to hit recruiting first because it's really been a big, last 24 hours for Arkansas in terms of the Nate Ament sweepstakes, class of 2025, national number 3, so top 5 rated 5-star guy that Arkansas has been recruiting for a while. Even going back to May, back in Bryan, Texas, on the Adidas circuit when I was there to watch Calipari in the house, watching Nate Ament. I was covering that event. I got to see Nate Ament play, and so did Calipari, and as did Bruiser Flint. Bruiser Flint was out there for that event. So Arkansas had 2 coaches out there, at least on the first day of that session, and it's been a progression of his Arkansas recruitment. That's Nate Ament, who yesterday put out his top 5 schools. He had a top 11. Arkansas was in it. He's cut it down to 5, and Arkansas made the cut. This does not surprise me at all. You don't hear any of the national recruiting talking heads really say a whole lot about Arkansas other than acknowledging that Calipari's put an effort in there, but most still believe it's a Duke, Louisville Final 2. Kentucky's emerged because of that visit that the Wildcats got a little over a week ago, getting him in for a midweek game. He was on campus for his visit for when Kentucky put the finishing touches on a season sweep over the Tennessee Volunteers. So a big win while he was there. We've been keeping a close eye on Ament in Arkansas because Calipari has been relentless. He has been on the road to see Ament numerous times, starting back in early September. That's not something Calipari does if a player's not genuinely interested beyond just a casual interest. We're talking the kind of back and forth with Ament, the prospect, his representation, his agent, family, whoever, that there's not some inclination that he wants to come and visit Arkansas and is really considering being a Razorback. Calipari's just not going to play. He's got the cachet as the greatest recruiter of all time, where he's not chasing anybody in terms of perception. For example, Arkansas's last coaching staff, although it did a good job at times with some high-level players, we know that class of 2022 with Anthony Black, Nick Smith Jr., and Jordan Walsh, 3 5-star one-and-dones. But outside of that, and some success with that 2020 class, it was mostly portal and then the high school guys, little hit and miss with some of them. Overall, a good job, but Arkansas loved being on these lists, the Final Four, the Final Five, with players that staff knew they were never going to even get on campus for a visit, but they recruited them enough to make those lists, and that mattered to them. I know this for a fact. Calipari doesn't operate that way. He doesn't care about being on a finals list. He's not investing time, wasting time, not putting in the resources, the effort. And then the last couple of weeks, he's been out to see Nate Ament. The last time that I'm aware of was just a few days ago, and Ament had a 32-point, 11 rebound, 4 block shot game to help his team win another, I think, a second consecutive private school title out where he plays. And Calipari was not only there, but he took both associate head coaches, Chin Coleman and Kenny Payne. So this is not a casual recruitment. It is not it's good to be seen. We want to be viewed as one of the top teams on this list. Calipari doesn't operate that way. He thinks this player's coming in to visit. He thinks he has a legitimate shot to landing. Now, the interesting thing is, not only did Arkansas make the top 5, but the teams we just mentioned that we've known about for a while, Duke and Louisville are in there as expected. Kentucky, just mentioned the visit there. Kentucky's in that final group, as is Tennessee, another school. So Ament has visited every team in this top 5 other than Arkansas. He also took other visits. One of those was Texas. Speaking of Texas, Arkansas plays Texas tonight. Texas is not on the list. Again, this is not one of those window dressing situations in terms of how Calipari sees it. Arkansas is not on the Final 5, and they're glad to be there for just optics. That's not how again, he's not looking for any extra marketing shine on being on someone's Final 5 list or Final 3 list if it's not a legitimate interest. And Calipari also operates this way. I've seen people asking, well, in the NIL world, how important is a visit? Well, Calipari, if you look at every player he's brought in on his current roster, every one of those players visited Arkansas and there was no public commitment announcements until they had been on campus. And we've seen other players, not only in this program in the past, even recently, commit before they visit. And it certainly happens in the portal, has happened in the portal. And you go back to COVID, it definitely happened because players couldn't go take visits. But Calipari, since he's been at Arkansas, if you don't visit, there's a progression, and that's part of it. And so this is a situation where what Calipari, the groundwork he's laid to get to this point, tells me that he believes he's going to get a visit or already has one, and planned, and a date's already been picked out, and it's just a matter of time. Because the other news that came out yesterday, in addition to the Final Five for Ament, is that his timeline is established April 1st. So just a little over a month, 30 plus days, almost 5 weeks is when he'll make his announcement. That's a Tuesday. It's the date of the McDonald's All-American game. He'll participate in that. If you go back and recall, Arkansas got a commitment from Anthony Black during the McDonald's All-American event. I don't know if it was on the game day or was it the day before during the Powerade, whatever they were doing. I don't remember, but I do know it was over the McDonald's All-American setting. Arkansas already had Jordan Walsh and Nick Smith Jr. Committed, and Anthony Black was the last guy in that group. So we've seen this before, even at Arkansas, happen this way, but that gives Arkansas plenty of time to get him in. Said for the longest time, going back to December, I had a source connected with the NBA that said that Ament wanted to visit Arkansas and was going to visit Arkansas, and it was going to be some playing date in the future to attend a Razorback game. And we've seen some of his visits. That's what he's doing. He's going to these games during basketball season. I've never been able to get a playing date or opponent for that. Arkansas's down to Tech at home now, 4 games left, 2 at home. One of those is tonight in Bud Walton Arena. I plan to be there, and I'll do a post-game live, by the way, live from Bud Walton Arena after the game. It's a late start. We're going to talk about some things going on with Arkansas right now because, as I mentioned, as you all know, the Thiero situation makes things dicey in a game where you're matched up with another bubble team. But tonight would be an opportunity. I've seen nothing and heard nothing about Ament coming to town to be there. The last time Arkansas has a home game before, and then that for the season, will be March 8th, the final regular season game, Mississippi State. That is a Saturday. The Bulldogs come in, and Arkansas probably will still be a bubble team at that point, and very likely will be. And that would be a game where you could have a men in for a visit. If not, there are still pockets of time, even though Arkansas will be dealing with a postseason at that point, SEC tournament coming up, and who knows what happens after that if there's an NCAA tournament, if they accept an NIT bid. But there's potential for some pockets of some windows in the next month, next 5 weeks, to possibly get him in on campus for a visit. Again, most people that you listen to that cover recruiting nationally, they think it's a Louisville Duke 1-2, and I see different things. It seems like Duke, for the most part, has kind of been the front runner with Louisville right there. Sometimes, some days you hear, well, maybe it's Louisville. Certainly, anytime Kentucky gets a player on campus this late, you got to think the Wildcats have a shot. Mark Pope's done a good job recruiting so far. He's already assembled a strong 2025 class out of the high school ranks, as has Arkansas when you look at the early period. So we'll see what happens with Nate Ament. I suspect, again, just looking at Calipari's moves, which are very public, that he believes, I said it over, it's a broken record that he's going to get a visit, but I don't mean it's like a gut feeling he'll talk him into it. I think there's enough conversation between the camps to think there's no way Calipari's doing what he's doing and making these moves to go see this young man as much as he has, when he has. I mean, the most recent visit that I'm aware of that I mentioned to watch Ament play in that title game, and he took Chin Coleman and Kenny Payne, that was 2 days before Arkansas's road game against Auburn. And you're talking about a bubble team. Chuck Martin stayed back and ran practice. So, recruiting goes on. Calipari, it's a must to do these things if you're in a picture for a kid, but only if you're clearly in the picture. And only he knows at what level. So all these other conversations going on, with national recruiting folks. Although I respect it, they're getting some good intel there. Certainly more than I've gotten in this instance. You know, it could very well be that it's a Duke Louisville final, but I think it's also very much a Calipari has confidence that Arkansas's very much in this. And again, he's not going to do what he's done if he doesn't think he's going to get them on campus. And again, that's always part of his process, because we look at Arkansas here anyway. We look at Arkansas's first recruiting class. Every single player made it to campus before there was any official word of anything better, which would be the commitment and then later a signing. So we're 10 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. We got a lot to get to today. I just want to mention Calipari was out last night to see Malik Thomas, signed 5-star, top 10 rated 5-star guard, was in Atlanta at the Overtime Elite semifinals. City Reapers is the team that Thomas plays for. Big game last night with Cal in the house, 38 points. He made 8 threes in that game. Man, we know Arkansas needs an infusion of guys that are not bashful, but that can also knock it down. He has shot what he's been an efficient 3-point shooter this season statistically. He also had 8 rebounds. He's a guy that from that guard spot at 6'4", when you look at him, he has a lot of double doubles and puts up some really good rebounding numbers along with his scoring. I think, but his team won. His team won the game last night, scored in the 90s. He was obviously the leading scorer. Cal in the house. Darius Acuff Jr., Arkansas's top 5 rated 5-star player, 6'2" guard out of IMG Academy, just a few days ago, was named a finalist for the Naismith Trophy postseason or end of season National Player of the Year. That is a big deal. That's how good he's been playing. Every time we talk about him on these segments over the last few weeks and months, we've talked about just he's playing at a National Player of the Year kind of level. And now for the Naismith Trophy group to put him as a top 5 finalist, I think speaks to that and certainly backs it up. So, you know, a lot going on with Arkansas's recruiting right now. Nate Ament would be, you know, Arkansas's already got a top 5 rated class. When you look at Acuff and Thomas, both, again, top 10 rated 5-stars, both will be in the McDonald's All-American game as well. And so there's a little bit of symmetry. It's a different coaching staff. When I mentioned Nick Smith, Jordan Walsh, and then securing Anthony Black, is, you know, does Arkansas have a chance where at Acuff Thomas, you know, because the teams Ament's looking at, they've also got players going to be in the McDonald's All-American game, some of these teams, and plenty of talent to persuade him. And we know it's really going to come down to NIL with him. So swinging back, I want to mention those 2 names. Arkansas's got a top 5 rated class as it is from the early period. They'd love to add Nate Ament. While this would not technically be, I wouldn't consider, if he could get him, Calipari's first frontline guy. He's a guy that will play some small ball as a 3-4 combo, some small ball 4 for Arkansas. And we've seen a little bit of that with Carter Knox and even Billy Richmond. And we're going to talk more about what's up next without ado. Thiero. Those guys may be called on more in some small ball lineups, depending upon what works. But looking at Nate Ament, what are some combinations that you can get to him, you know, with other players helping recruit him? I just went through that. But I think the other thing is going to come down to NIL. And with Calipari, that's the other thing. He's got a treasure trove. And it's just, how does he want to use it? I say all the time, he has valuation limits on players. That'll be the case with Nate Ament. He's not going to go insane with it. But this tells me, even though I've been hearing for a while, that this is obviously a situation where there's an NIL spin-up going here as part of the time frame. You know, you announce on April 1st, the early period starts in April, so this gets done pretty quickly. NIT tournament for Arkansas. All right, that's one of the comments from Matt, Coach Matt. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Arkansas's got a big hill to climb. But I think NIL is a place where right now, because Calipari's still in this, he's comfortable where whatever those conversations he's having with the agent and his representation, whoever that is, he's comfortable with where things are right now and what Arkansas could do there. Because when it gets to a point where he's not, and we've seen this in the past, he'll peel off. Yes, he's reaffirming, yes, NIT tournament for Arkansas. Okay. Well, so we'll see with Nate Ament, but this would be a jewel. I mean, you add him to the class, if that were to happen, I've said it before. Arkansas now has arguably got the top class in the country. The guy's versatile at 6'9", long, just a knockdown, efficient volume 3-point shooter, makes good decisions as a passer, makes great reads in game situations, whether it's dribble handoff, pick and roll, pick and pop, making the hockey assist, because he sees how the pieces are moving. He helps complement what you're trying to do. He's not just a selfish kind of go chase points and go chase shots kind of player. I've seen him do it both ways. I've seen him take over games with his scoring, and I've seen him play just get his 20 points in a very efficient, very moderate volume way, because he just understands how it works. And I understand, because I see this, it brings a lot of versatility to what you can do with your lineups. This guy's going to be a lottery pick, potentially the number one pick. Well, I'm not saying he will be the top pick in a couple of years, but I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility. All right. So let's move on. I've been doing this lately. The last two segments I've come on, I've talked about portal in Arkansas. And the first, I've kind of focused on front line, simply because Arkansas, when you look at the high school recruiting so far, it's backcourt, guards, wing, and a wing, Isaiah Seeley, a combo guard and wing, 6'7" out of Springdale. The one name I didn't mention in that 3-player class in this segment, but a top 75, 80-ish 4-star out of Springdale. So I've been talking frontline guys, and the two names I've mentioned in the most two recent episodes were Jaden Quaintance and Somtu Cyril. Quaintance at Arizona State, a freshman; Cyril, a freshman at Georgia. Both of these guys were recruited by Cal to Kentucky, committed and or signed. Two players that he obviously didn't bring with him. Two players that are getting a year of experience, more playing time and more production from Quaintance, which is no surprise, a top 15 rated 5-star McDonald's All-American, who's got, because of his age, has to play 2 years at the college level. Arizona State's, been in kind of a floundering program under Bob Hurley. This season's no different. I don't know how sweet his NIL deal is, and if it's wrapped around 2 years and already locked in, or if there's negotiating power after that, or if Calipari would be even interested. But he's a frontline piece. Same with Somtu Cyril. Both of those guys would make sense to me, especially if you can get Big Z back, because they would complement him. So I'm going to go with another frontline guy today. And in this age of portal, excuse me, and how NIL is playing into it, you don't have to have some major shift at a program for players to want to leave. But anytime there's a coaching change, especially in season, which we saw at Utah in the last few days, a Big 12 program, you start to wonder what players on that roster might be an interest to a team, a coach like Calipari and a team like Arkansas. Well, I'm going to go at it from this perspective today with this player I'm about to talk about. I'm going to assume, just for a minute, there's a possibility that Calipari reconsiders his roster builds and wants to expand from a top 9 to maybe a top 10 or 11. And this Adu Thiero thing we're going to get into when we talk about the reality of what's left for Arkansas and starting with this game tonight, maybe even more ammunition to do that, especially the season Arkansas's had with attrition. And so if you do that, I looked at a player that Utah has. It's a sophomore, would be a junior next year. I'm staying on the front line as a guy that maybe could be a back end, and then you see if you're pleasantly surprised, but someone that could help you as anywhere in that 8 to 11 range if you did expand your roster. So there's a potential here for a player like this. I'm not saying Arkansas would be interested in this specific player, but just the type of player potentially, because I think he's an interesting player. He's a Houston native, Keanu Dawes, 6'9", 220, at Utah, 7.2 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 61% shooting from the field, 30% on low volume. He takes a 3 every game, and he's hit, 29 attempts. He's made 10, just over 30%, but he's the kind of guy that'll take one if you leave him open, and he hits a decent clip there, and he's almost 71% from the free throw line. So you look at it. Here's a guy that's got a handful of double doubles, but he's only playing 17 minutes a game. So that production on that, he's efficient. And he's not just a guy that if he can't score inside or around the basket, he can't face up and knock down a shot. I just went through that. He's decent at the free throw line, a little better than what Adu Thiero is right now, but only 17 minutes a game and getting 7.2 points and nearly 6 rebounds a game. He's got several double doubles, and he plays in the Big 12. So here's a guy. He started his career at Rice, played this season at Utah. Is this a guy that, if you did expand your roster, would this be the kind of guy that you would want to kind of maybe backfill and then see what he can give you? Maybe he can prove to be more and be more of a fixture in your rotation. If not, I don't know. I don't know if you did add a 10th and 11th guy, how that redistributes your NIL pot, because it would affect it. And maybe some of those, again, back end guys 9 through 11 wouldn't get as much. I don't know what he's getting there. I don't know what other teams might pursue him. He's just an intriguing player to me. Have no clue if this will be a player that Arkansas will have interest in, but it's just an example of something that I think about in terms of what could Calipari do to maybe expand his roster. Will he do that? I don't know, but if he does, maybe this is the kind of player, not necessarily specifically this guy, but just going through it, looking at his role at Utah this year and how he can maybe help a team like Arkansas as insurance on the front line, which I think Arkansas could use, but also some of the versatility that we thought Trevor Brazile would bring. You know, we know Brazile percentage-wise is not a bad three-point shooter. We know that he can face up a little bit. We know that he can play above the rim. This is not exactly the same kind of player in terms of what some of the tools Brazile has, but he maybe would bring some things that you thought Brazile would offer that we haven't seen, not consistently, every once in a while here and there. We're at a point now where Arkansas needs Brazile to have the kind of game he had against Michigan. We're in that stage right now with some question marks, not only about Thiero, who we know is out tonight, but moving forward. I'll talk more about that here in a little bit. All right, so we went through a little portal talk. Retention, it remains the same for me. I don't know if you're going to be able to convince Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, and Big Z to come back. To me, those are the three guys, and probably DJ Wagner, that you'd like to have back. And you've got NIL money. And the NIL money, several of those guys are probably going to deserve raises over what they got this year, even though they were paid well. It's just the way it's probably going to be if you really want to have retention and have some argument why is not to jump in and try to go pro right now. Big Z, haven't seen him on any recent mock draft boards, but that could change, especially the way he's starting to produce and starting to show more wrinkles and improvement in his game. There's a long way to go for him in terms of strength, understanding. I mean, he's still a little careless sometimes, a little aloof, but again, NBA drafts off potential, and they want to get a player into their game because it's a different game than the college game. It is. It's a different animal. And it's a full-time job. Now you don't have to worry about classes. Again, they're looking at what you can be, and he's showing a lot right now. Excuse me. Carter Knox is another guy. He's starting to produce more. He's starting to show more. His understanding that less is more. The NBA is going to love that about him, by the way, when they look at that strong frame. I'm not saying he's a guy that's a first-round projected kind of guy. He's not. If you look at mock drafts, I found one where he was projected second round out of a handful or six that I looked at. Not in the mix in the other ones as of now. So these are guys you're going to look to retain. And again, NIL gives you some versatility because if a player even tests the waters and they're not getting the kind of feedback in the draft process that they'd like, they may be getting the feedback, look, if you come back in a year and get back in the draft, here's your potential landing spot. And by the way, Arkansas is also saying, yeah, we've got this NIL money over here to entice you to stay. So all that's in play, especially with Calipari. He's been a guy that sends players on to that next level when it's time for them. He's not going to try to hold them back. But at the same time, he's had guys come back who initially were thought maybe they will be drafted. Some of his guys have slid in projections. DJ Wagner is a guy that I don't see as a draft guy, as a guy that will be drafted. I don't see that unless there's some weird deal with some agent that he hooks up with that agrees with some team to draft him and then use him as a two-way player for a while. That happens sometimes when teams otherwise don't want the pick. They're stuck with it. They don't have a venue, a package to put together to trade it out. And sometimes they'll draft a guy somewhere in the second round and just to put him as a two-way player. So sometimes those things do happen. But again, NIL is a reason not to do that. I can tell you right now, DJ Wagner's making about double what some of those two-way guys are getting. So at Arkansas. So again, that is going to be what'll weigh into maybe Calipari retaining some guys. And again, Calipari's not only the best in recruiting, he's the best at getting guys to the next level and then watching them flourish. It's not across the board the case, but his percentage of guys that get max deals or get really good second and third contracts is as good as anyone out there, the best. So he's got all of that still going for him, which will help with retention. So we'll keep an eye on that. But retention's also going to shape what Arkansas does in the portal. And let's say you keep a Carter Knox and a Billy Richmond, for example, and you've got Acuff, Malik Thomas, and Isaiah Seeley coming in. Well, that's guards and wings. So again, you're probably looking at portal at this point, and we don't know where things will go with Nate Ament, but that's a big wing / small ball 4. So you're definitely going to be focusing a lot of your portal, in my opinion, on that front line. Because Jonas Adu's gone. We'll see about Big Z. We don't know. Trevor Brazil still has another year of eligibility. No clue how that plays out or what you want there in terms of keeping him if you're John Calipari. But Arkansas's got some work to do on that front line. And so with retention, you would like to see Arkansas at least if they can, figure out a way to keep Z. So you may have to give him a significant bump. And a lot of that's going to be also on his feedback if he goes through the process and tests the waters. If I'm him, if I'm Carter Knox, even if I'm Billy Richmond, I'm likely to test the draft waters and get that feedback because we know players can come back to school if they do that. All right, so let's look at Arkansas, Texas. Both of them bubble teams, both of them eerily similar. Texas 39th in net today, Arkansas 40th. Both teams have 4 quad 1 wins. Texas is 4-8 in quad 1 games. Arkansas 4-9. So percentage-wise, Texas a little better there. Where Texas is ahead of Arkansas and in the last 4 buys group, and Arkansas is in the last 4 in. The reason there's probably separation there is Texas is 3-3 in quad 2 games. Texas is 2-1 in quad 1 games. Arkansas is 1-2. So Texas just a little bit better percentage-wise in the quad 1s for what it's worth, and a game better than Arkansas in the quad 2. And they both are 3-5 in true road games. Texas is 3-3. This is where I was getting the 3-3. Texas 3-3 in neutral site games. Arkansas is 1-2. So Texas, I guess the resume is a little bit better there. One slot better in net. Both teams are identical records in the SEC. They're tied for 11th place. Record-wise, Arkansas right now has the head-to-head and would get the 11th place seeding because of the head-to-head win at Texas earlier this month. But both 5-9 in league play. I think both teams, they're both 16-11 overall. So almost mirror images when you look at resumes. So you're in must-win territory almost every game. I know I said Arkansas only needs 2 more wins out of its last 4. So in theory, no game right now is must-win. But the more I look at what other bubble teams are doing, Georgia in the next 4 out group with a big win last night against Florida at home. Georgia's going to move at least to the first 4 out. And their resume's not too far off from where Arkansas is. Georgia's actually ahead of both Arkansas and Texas in net, a few rungs up, 36 or something like that, 36, 35. We know Arkansas beat Georgia at home by 3 points. But Georgia's a team again now, 4-10 in league play, only 1 game ahead. Arkansas is in the league standings there. But things are getting crazy because Oklahoma had the big home win over Mississippi State. Vanderbilt had the big home win over Ole Miss. Vanderbilt's actually moved up off the bubble, still a 10 seed, so real close to being back on the bubble. And Arkansas's got Vandy coming up. So all these bubble teams in the SEC, and it starts tonight with Texas, and lo and behold, Arkansas's without a Duke Thiero. And that's a big deal. Thiero is Arkansas's best player. He's the team's leading scorer, leading rebounder, leading in steals, the most efficient shooter because he gets to the rim a lot. So he's been the most efficient shooter inside the arc for sure. Not so much outside the arc, but of late, He's, taking one or two or three threes, and he'll stick one here and there. But it's the other things he does. I mentioned the other night, only 26 minutes in the big win over 15th ranked Missouri, 92-85, and he didn't finish the last 6 minutes because of an injury. But even in his time on the court, Arkansas, was up, I think, 11 when he went out of the game. It immediately went to 6. Arkansas ends up winning by 7. But he was plus 19 in the box score. There's something I've noticed about Thiero, whether he's having a big game or a not great game, mostly good games, but a few stinkers in there. But usually when he's on the court, his box score plus minus leads the team or is up there. And so that's the kind of impact he has at both ends. And because he packages a lot of stuff. He's 6'8", 6'7" to 6'8", solidly built, powerful, athletic, incredible burst. And he's just one of those energy guys that really puts pressure on a defense because you have to account for his drives or try to. And then he's a good defender. And he's also a guy that makes, those big plays in transition off of steals and 50-50 balls. And so you're missing your best player now. Arkansas now has its two leading scorers on the season. They've been playing without Boogie Fland. After an 0-5 league start, they've gone 5-4 without him. I'm not sure there's a pathway to continue to be basically a 500 team moving forward with Noah Thiero. Look, I was told yesterday, I've not been able to confirm this with a second source. This did not come from Arkansas staff, but I was told Thiero might be out, that the goal is to get him back by the SEC tournament. Not that there's 100% giving up hope that it couldn't be sooner than that, but that was probably the most realistic timeline for a potential return. We've gotten mixed signals. Arkansas's not really spoken on what his injury is in terms of something very specific. Calipari has said, I guess, after the game against Missouri in a post-game press conference that his back was bothering him. Well, that's not really a diagnosis or anything to hang your hat on as far as what is the exact problem. And during the telecast, it was being talked about. It sounded like the broadcast crew had information that maybe it was a hamstring or something like that. So who knows what it is? Arkansas hasn't clarified since, but we know he's out tonight. He's been ruled out, and that's in line with what I'm told that maybe it's the SEC tournament. The only thing that will upset that apple cart is if he plays in one of these regular season games before then, which you hope is what the case is. But Arkansas now is down to a 7 rotation going against Texas tonight. The Hogs had their way for the most part against the Longhorns down in Austin earlier this month, 78-70, but Arkansas led by 23 in that game. Longhorns made a furious comeback. I called it official aided, ref aided, zebra aided comeback for Texas. But still, it was a comeback, and it was one of those things where we saw Arkansas really, especially in the second half, getting dominated with Texas's offensive rebounding and just keeping possessions going and finding a way to get back in that game with a lot of whistles to get to the foul line. And so, with Thiero out, again, your best rebounder, he doesn't lead you every night, but he's by average, your top rebounder, around 6 per game. And so this is going to be difficult for Arkansas for many reasons, but I think the glass work could be one of those because Arkansas, even with Thiero, we see it game in and game out. They get clobbered on the offensive glass when you compare it to what Arkansas is getting in the other team in those second chance points. And so then Arkansas, which needs to be a really good transition team and was against Missouri, but has really not been a great transition team through conference play like they were in non-conference. A lot of that's your live ball turnovers, getting steals and getting out. Arkansas has not been dependable there. They've been more reliable as getting clobbered on the offensive glass than they have been as make it up in the turnover and transition game. And so all these things are a concern moving forward because Thiero was he was your best rebounder and is your top steals guy to get out in transition. So you're missing a lot there. And then just his ability to create a driving lane, it's hit and miss with him. But when it's hit, it's just almost impossible to stop him. It's more likely that he'll somehow miss a dunk or a layup than you're actually going to prevent him from scoring once he gets downhill, and you can't change his course. If you can change his course, 8 feet away from the basket, he loses his balance. He's not a guy that's looking to pass off his drives either. You don't see a lot of creativity off of that. It's just A to B, boom, can you do it? So Arkansas is without a lot here. When you go back to that Texas game, Arkansas did get a lot from its backcourt in that game. Nelly Davis had his Arkansas high in scoring 24 points. It was efficient. He was creating shots in that game like he did against Kentucky. We saw him have a really good game at home against Missouri. Finally started shooting well at home against Missouri. Most of his success had been on the road in terms of shooting percentage. So you'll see if you can have carryover. But 24 points against the Longhorns in the first game. DJ Wagner had 13. He did not shoot well in that game, but he did finish with 13 points. And Carter Knox had 9 points. But all three of those guys, they combined. So 9, 13 is 22 plus 24 is 46 points. Is my math right? 9, 13, 22 plus 24 is 46 points. But I believe they also combined to hit, when you add in Billy Richmond off the bench, those four players made 20 out of 20 at the free throw line. They made all their free throws, and all four of them shot free throws. I think all four of them attempted at least 4 each. And that was the game. Thiero, by the way, went 6 of 12 at the foul line. That kind of helped Texas as well. Arkansas's kind of up and down in free throw shooting. This last game, 37 attempts against Missouri, and they made almost 76% of those. That's that's a really good percentage and a really nice game for Arkansas as a team. So I look at what they did against Texas last time. Arkansas's been a better road team. They finally broke through with a quality home win. This will be a quad 2 result for Arkansas, by the way, based on where Texas is in the quad rankings. Arkansas will be a quad 1 win for Texas. So Texas gets a bigger bump by winning. Arkansas at this point, I said all that to say, when we look at these matchups, the only thing different really about Texas is they've moved Julian Larry, senior guard, 6'3" guard, into the starting lineup. Jordan Pope, the transfer from Oregon State, is now playing off the bench. He was in the starting lineup for most of the year. He's been up and down this season, Pope. But Larry actually had a decent game for Texas against Arkansas. Arkansas was really jumped all over Texas early, had that big lead, and Larry kind of had some scoring going on a little bit there. I think he finished with 11 points, but he kind of, kept Texas, from going down 30. And so he helped Texas in that game, and he's been starting since that game. And Texas has still struggled. They've got one quality win against Kentucky at home, a game they really needed. A Kentucky collapsed, missing several players, right? Been in Austin since, but around that after that Arkansas loss, Texas has also lost at Vanderbilt. They went on the road and lost to South Carolina over the weekend, and that's Carolina's first win in league play, even though Carolina's a tough out. Nonetheless, this Texas team that's not trending as well even as Arkansas is, in terms of Arkansas's at least called together kind of a win-loss, win one, lose one average in the last 9 games after starting 0-5. Texas is like 1-4 or 1-5 in its last 5 or 6 games. So it's one of those situations where Texas desperately needs a win, and Arkansas is even more shorthanded, going 7 deep. So this is going to be tough for the Razorbacks. Looking at the bubble, you're competing with OU's 1 slot ahead of Arkansas on Joe Lenardi, ESPN bracketology. On his last 4 in group, Arkansas is the 3rd out of 4 teams, so 2 slots away from being out. Every game's critical. I've said for a while Arkansas needs Texas also, I mentioned, on the bubble. Vanderbilt just off of it. Georgia, again, I mentioned, is going to move up on it. So Arkansas is competing with those teams. And then some other ones, Wake Forest, San Diego State, Ohio State, West Virginia is another bubble team. North Carolina and Indiana are in the picture. So, you've got some work to do if you're Arkansas. And I've said for a while, getting to this point, if you got to 7-11, that'll probably put you on the correct part of the bubble, the good part of the bubble, going into the SEC tournament. I think that's probably still true, but because of the success some of these teams have had tonight, we're keeping an eye on Kentucky at OU tonight, by the way. That's another opportunity. But looking at Georgia's win over Florida, looking at Vandy's win over Ole Miss, looking at OU's win over Mississippi State, those teams moved up more than Arkansas did with its win over Missouri. And I think it makes the margin for Arkansas a little tighter. I thought the Missouri win might make Arkansas expand Arkansas's margin for error. But because of the success of other teams, it's not just what you're doing in a vacuum, it's what others are doing. And apparently where their resumes are, at least in Lenardi's opinion, Arkansas, the margin for error is not as good as I thought it would be if they won at home against Missouri. So having said that, can Arkansas still finish 2-2 and be on the good part of the bubble going into the SEC tournament? I think so. I don't think it's as much of a given that will be true. I think it's a possibility. But if the teams also on the bubble that Arkansas is competing with continue to have some success to finish out their last 3, 4, 5 games, it may not be true. I've said this: if Arkansas gets to 8 and 10, so 3 out of these next 4, they're a lock to get in the NCAA tournament. That I'm not backing off of. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think there's any question about it. And obviously, if you go 4-0, now you're not only off the bubble, you're playing for improved seeding, and maybe with a little luck and some good work in the SEC tournament, you're looking at, maybe even as good as a 7 seed. That's probably a ceiling if you're Arkansas. But we're so far from that, and with the Thiero right now, you're just got to figure out a way to win tonight, and then figure out how soon do you get him back. If it's the SEC tournament, this is going to be a heavy lift for a depleted Arkansas team down to a 7 rotation. And this really means to get there now, to have the kind of success you need to have what we just said, to put yourself in a position to be an NCAA tournament at-large team. Other guys are going to have to step up. You're already getting really what Billy Richmond brings to the table. He's not a guy that you were ever counting on to be a big volume score guy. His minutes may go up, and that may mean increased production, but he's not a guy that you're looking to be one of your primary scorers. Guys like DJ Wagner and Nelly Davis, who averaging a little over 10 points per game, and Big Z, his scoring production's gone way up, but he had such a lull for a while. He's still under 10 points per game on the season. So those are your 3 primary guys offensively, Nelly, DJ, and Big Z. So far, Carter Knox is a guy that we've seen even consistently lately getting in double-figure scoring, but he's been doing it on a lower diet of shot taking, and that's been a good thing. He's no longer chasing shots. He's taking better shots. He understands his role. He's getting it organically through the flow and letting the game come to him and getting his spots. I don't know now if this is a guy you can say, okay, we're going to have to get more from you in terms of scoring, or just consistently do what you've been doing lately and somehow get to double figures by doing it the right way. So it's going to be kind of committee. I think the biggest thing we turn to now is guys like Jonas Adu, who showed proof of life against Missouri with 6 points, 5 rebounds, a block, an assist, a box +4 in 15 minutes. Trevor Brazile, a transition dunk. He was -1 on the scoreboard at least in that game because he fouled a 3-point shooter who knocked all 3 down, Caleb Grill of all people, in that first half. But he's been a negative factor in my opinion. He was -12 box in a game you won by 7, in his minutes, 12 minutes. So, I mean, whatever he's got to do to conjure up the Michigan version of himself, which is Arkansas, one of Arkansas's, top 3 wins on the season way back in December. I don't know if you can get that much out of him, but somewhere in between. But you're going to need more in combination now with Jonas Adu and Trevor Brazile. I think both of those players will be getting increased minutes. I think that's obvious. Calipari's going to have to decide, how much am I going to play with the 4 smaller guys, your 3 starters in the backcourt and wing, plus Billy Richmond, plus one of those bigs on the court. How many minutes do you do that? How many lineups do you have either Big Z and Jonas Adu together, Big Z, Trevor Brazile together, and, Jonas Adu and Trevor Brazile together? How many of those, how does that work out? Is it a situation where it's the hot hand or who's playing well at that time? Big Z has actually improved on the interior offensively. He's no longer just a perimeter passing and shooting threat from 3. He's improved his work, his footwork, and his aggressiveness, trying to get a little closer to the basket. When you make a mid-post entry or a low-post entry to him, he's gotten more comfortable trying to play through contact. He's not moving people around, but he's also finding ways to get closer to the basket after catching an entry pass. Before, all he would do is turn and maybe fade, not get any closer. Now he's getting closer to the basket. He's doing a better job as a rebounder, not good enough, in my opinion, for what you really need from him, but he's improved. I could tell Kenny Payne's made progress with him. His shot blocking numbers have gone up a little bit. And a lot of that's to do, he's playing more minutes because guys like Jonas Adu and Trevor Brazile just haven't been doing it right. 45 minutes in, my promise to myself that I was going to keep it to 35 minutes today got blown out of the water. Arkansas and Texas tonight, man, this is a must win. I'm getting to the part where I start to say, you know what, these are must win. And here's why. I'm going to jump back to the 2-2 thing. Let's say your 2 wins are tonight against Texas and then on the road against South Carolina. And then you have 2 quad 1 games at Vandy and at Mississippi State, and you lose those. Well, all you did was win 2 quad 2 games. And I don't know that that moves Arkansas's needle much on that bubble if you lose the other 2. Because by that point, you'll be 4-11 in quad 1 games. You will have finished 3-2 in quad 2, but you add them up, you're still below 500 in your quality wins totals. And most of even your lower quad stuff was heavily in that, stacked in that quad 4 realm. So if your 2 wins are the 2 quad 2 wins, I don't know that moves the needle much for you. It might keep you in the last 4 in, other than what other quality wins are some of these other bubble teams getting that are quad 1 grade at that point. So that's the one thing that concerns me now, because some of these other teams have been getting quad 1 wins recently, even when Arkansas got its quad 1 against Missouri. So there's a little bit of concern there looking at that 2-2 edict. I think if Arkansas, let's say Arkansas, split these next 2 games against South Carolina and Texas and picked up a quad 1 road win over Vanderbilt or a quad 1 home win over Mississippi State. The thing about Mississippi State is they get shellacked. And Mississippi State was a Friends top 30 net team. And so if Mississippi State's outside the top 30, that'll be a quad 2 result. So now you're down to needing to pick up a quad 1 win if you can at Vanderbilt. I just think that right now, because of the way things are trending, Arkansas is shrinking on its quad 1 win opportunities that are still available. And I don't know that just picking up a couple of more quad 2 wins is enough to be okay going into the SEC tournament. It might be. There might be a path on how you win 2 out of 4 where you'd be okay getting in. And there's no guarantee what some of these other bubble teams will do. You got to think some of those are going to flounder and maybe not even split their last few games. So it's just going to be, you're more relying upon not only what you're doing, but what other teams are doing if you can't win the majority of these games that are remaining. Again, you go 3-1, Arkansas is a lot. I have no doubt about that. 4-0, and now you're just playing for seeding going to the SEC tournament. All right, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It was our pregame. It was a little recruiting talk. We'll see what happens with Ament, the 5-star 2025. Calipari in Arkansas would love to finish with him. We threw out another portal name. I don't even know if it's a real possibility for Arkansas, but I kind of put some conditions around how I could see maybe something like this for this Keanu Dawes at Utah, and then some success for Darius Acuff Jr. on the Naismith Trophy watch list, finalist, down to the 5 finalists. And Cal out to see Malik Thomas last night, put up 38 points, 8 3-pointers in that mix, 8 rebounds, and a win as his team won in the semifinals in the overtime elite event. Until next time, tonight, it'll be late, post-game from Bud Walton Arena. Hopefully we're talking about an Arkansas victory. But until next time, and if we get Ament Arkansas visit news between now and later, I'm going to come in and we'll have 3 segments today. But until I see you, take care and see you tonight.